Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Safeopedia webinar. My name is Samantha, and we'd like to wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm from Safeopedia, and here at Safeopedia, it is our mission to support you, the EH&S professionals, operational folks, and any safety-minded individuals with free safety information, tools, and education. I want to extend a huge thank you to you, all of our dedicated safety professionals, for the great work you do on a daily basis in keeping our workplaces safe. Just a reminder, our annual virtual conference, Safety Connect, is coming up on October 21st to 23rd. We're going to have conversations just like this. Ben is actually going to be there. You'll be able to collect CEUs, collect huge prizes, and much, much more. So I'm going to put the link in the chat. Make sure you're registered for that, and we can't wait to see you there. Today, we are proud to present rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, the hidden hazards. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you today's presenter, Ben Hissam. Today, Ben is going to help you identify the types and uses of lithium-ion batteries commonly found in homes and workplaces, and help you get a better understanding of their potential failure modes. With that, I'm very excited to have you all sit back, relax, and enjoy this presentation. All right, Ben, let's jump into it.
Okay, thank you so much, Samantha. Welcome, everyone. Today, this is kind of an awareness level for rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, the hidden hazard. A little bit about myself is I have been around. I'm a hazmat instructor. I was with the Bureau of Workers' Compensation as a safety and hygiene safety consultant for 20 years. I just recently retired from there. I was with Procter & Gamble's EH&S department, and I ran the hazmat teams there as a team leader. I am also a 107 commercial pilot for UAVs, which is drones, and FEMA instructor, and also a MERT instructor. That is my contact information, and we can share that at the end. So here's my question is, how many of these do you have in your home? And I've done this presentation many, many times for safety councils, and you can see that everybody has some sort of a rechargeable lithium-ion battery in their home. We're going to talk about the dangers that these have, but most of the time, I want everybody to understand that these are safe to use. So every time I've done this presentation, I've scared people. It's like, don't get scared. These are pretty much safe, but we just want to talk about what are the things that when you should see something that may be damaged and what to do. So today's objectives are, we're going to talk about the hazards of lithium-ion batteries, some of the common mistakes that are out there with overcharging, maybe storing them in a charger for a long period of time, and it actually affects the battery management system, which I'm going to talk a little bit about when I talk about definitions. I want you to understand how to recognize these hazards, and then some of the components that make the lithium-ion batteries, which are the rechargeable batteries, and then what are the chemistries that are used in lithium-ion batteries that are most common, and then how these are repackaged in rechargeable devices. We're going to talk about how they're packaged in cells, and we'll talk a little bit about, and then just remember that lithium batteries are non-rechargeable, and so you probably have lithium batteries also, but today we're going to talk about lithium-ion, the rechargeable types. So some of the hazards that they pose, these are high energy devices. They burn very hot. So the temperatures are hot, and lithium, as you know, can burn without oxygen. And there's a potential for explosion in confined areas. And that's because some of the chemistries have hydrogen gas. These are very hard to suppress. Using normal type of fire extinguishing method, the only way to really control a lithium-ion battery is they're going to do what they're going to do, is always what I say. Use copious and large amounts of water, and then you've got to control the contaminants, the runoffs and things like that. But really what I want you to understand is recognizing what cell damages and what packaging types there are. These, as a hazmat instructor, which really tweaked my interest, is they off gas. So when they start to puff and they start to off gas, they're highly toxic and flammable materials. So these are the things that they pose. So let's talk about some of the common battery terminology, and then we'll get into some of the schematics. So the anode is the negative electrode on the fuel side, which is copper. Usually a cathode is the positive electrode battery that usually is on aluminum. And then you have the electrolyte, which is the catalyst that allows the electrons to flow through the area to the cathode. And usually that could be a flammable, volatile organic compound. And then you have the separator, which is usually a very thin film or some sort of a material that keeps the anode and the cathode from getting together. And that's when you have the damage. And then we're going to talk about state of charge. So the state of charge is the amount of charge that you have in that battery. Obviously, the state of charge 100% is more dangerous than 30 or 50%. We're going to talk about that also. And then the brains of the battery is the battery management system, and that controls the temperature. It controls the battery, the anode, the cathode from overcharging. It tells you, and that's actually the safety factors of the charger. So we're going to talk about that a little bit also. So these are some of the most common types of lithium-ion chemistries out there. And I usually focus in on, the NMC, which is the nickel magnesium cobalt oxide, also known as NMC. If you look at the failure temperature on that's 410 degrees. There's a lot of LFP out there, lithium iron phosphate, and that has a failure temperature of 518 degrees. These are the most common types out there right now, the NMC and the LFP. And that's really why I wanted to share that with you. So some of the common, like I just said, lithium nickel cobalt oxide, lithium iron phosphate. As you can see, this is when they totally fail, and this is when they are going to off gas and possibly go into thermal runaway. There are three different types of batteries out there. The cylindrical is the 18650 battery. It looks like a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about that in more depth, but it's usually a little bit more than a AA. It has a vent on it also. The prismatic are the things that you see usually in storage systems. And then the pouch type are kind of the things that you see in smaller rechargeable, like e-cigarettes, could be some cell phones also. So the cylindrical type is mostly the most common type of battery that's out there is the 18650. It's a little bit, like I said, a little bit larger than a AA. It was invented in 91. Carries 3.6 volts. It's definitely the workhorse of the industry. It's one of the things that you see a lot of lithium-ion rechargeables are using these 18650. These battery types are packaged together, depending on what type of source it is. And there is a propagation vent disc that is going to off gas when things start to fail. There also is a little bit bigger battery called the 4680. There's a couple of these out there, but these are the two main ones. The 4680 is usually a larger type of battery. It's larger than a D-type battery, and how they get it around is 80 millimeters by 46 millimeters. Talks about that these are usually used in Teslas and e-transport devices, such as scooters and Segways. They're mostly starting to use them in Tesla just because they don't have to have as many batteries in the cells. So that's the reason for that. They carry a little bit more voltage. So the 18650 full charge is 3.7 volts. If you look at an e-mobility device such as an e-scooter or a hoverboard, there is around 52 to 60 batteries in there with different cells. A hoverboard has around 40 to 50 different types of these 18650. And if you can see, the protective casing around that is actually, that's the cell. So depending on if you have, let's just say, a Tesla or an EV vehicle, some of these carry around 4,000 batteries. And there's probably like 20 or 25 different cells in there holding probably anywhere from like 100 batteries to, whatever needed be. And how they are protected usually is a protective casing around those. And that's the battery management system. So depending on the voltage that's needed. This is a cutaway of a 20-volt DeWalt battery. And if you can see that there's 18650s in there. And if you look at that, the small battery carries 5 of these 18650s. Now the question is how many of these go into or get damaged? And we're going to talk a little bit about that, such as thermal runaway and full propagation. So like I said, the most common type of, usually in e-mobility devices, like I said, I'm a drone pilot. I happen to have 6 drones that I fly. Depending on how large the battery is, they could have, multiple cells or multiple batteries in there in the cell itself. Cordless power tools, like I said, e-mobility devices. These are high power applications, and they're known for their high energy with a long lifespan, but relatively low self-discharge rate. And we're going to talk a little bit about that also. This is a prismatic type, usually used in home storage, battery banks, large battery banks that you might see in solar farms. Could have multiple cells in battery banks. Like I said, they usually have cylinder types that are stacked batteries within the casing. These are the vent relief protection on those. And then the pouch type, like I said, are the cell batteries, small tablets, small electronic cigarettes, e-cigs. And what they do is they expand when they're charged and they deflate when they're losing their charge. So let's talk about the main components of rechargeable battery, and then we're going to get into a cutaway of these things. The cathode's on the positive side. The anode is on the negative side. The separator is what keeps the cathode and the anode and the electrolyte from coming together, and that's what causes the issue. Like I said, it's a hexafluorophosphate is the solid of the electrolyte, and usually some sort of a VOC flammable material is the liquid that's in there. So this is just a cutout of one of these of what they look like. The positive, the negative side, the anode and the cathode, and the separator. And this is a little bit better cutaway if you can see the electrolyte flowing through, making sure that the separator, they don't come into contact with each other. This is a lithium metal oxide. You have a lithium metal carbon, and this just shows how they charge and they decharge. So we're going to show you a quick video, and this is one you might have seen on YouTube. This is a big one on YouTube. But what I want to share with you is watch how fast this goes into full propagation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So he is charging. A very common mistake is they're charging these e-mobility devices in living spaces. This is something that the New York City Fire Department has a major campaign on this to make sure that they're not charging these things in living spaces. So I want you to watch how fast this happens. So first you're going to see the battery will start to off gas, and this is superheated gases. I believe this type is NMC. So it has a lot of hydrogen gas. So this thing is going to propagate very quickly. You're going to see it start to, this is thermal runaway that'll happen. You can see that the superheated gases, this happens in less than a minute. So this individual doesn't know what to do. He's going to try to, he doesn't, it's starting to now go into propagation mode. It'll start to expand. You'll start to see what he does do that's positive is that he opens and vents the area. Now you're going to start to see full propagation, superheated gases. What I would say is if you can possibly do it, well, first of all, the best thing to do is get out of Dodge, right? That's the first thing I say, is evacuate the area. These are superheated gases, a lot of hydrogen. You can see that the battery is in total thermal runaway and full propagation. And now, as you can see, the popping, those are the other batteries in the cell that are actually going into full propagation mode. So this is fire damage from an e-mobility device left in a hallway, and this actually is courtesy of the New York City Fire Department. I've taken classes with them, but this is one of the big things about campaigning this stuff. You do not want to charge these in living spaces. And this is a common mistake in apartment buildings. This one was left, I believe, in either a bedroom or a hallway. And you can see that it has gone into full propagation. You can see that it's flashover. You can see how the building itself was charred. And this was actually a fatality that happened. So what do we do to prevent these things? Well, first of all, we never charge these things in living quarters, near egress pathways or discharge locations that would lead to outside to be able to evacuate the premises. Don't keep batteries in chargers for long periods of time. And I always, when I'm doing this in person, I'm asking the audience, how many people are leaving their how many chargers are now, you might be charging a powered tool, and it's usually in the basement area or it's in the garage. And our garage, I used to leave, obviously I would leave the batteries charging because nobody wants a battery that, when you use a power tool, you want to make sure it's going to work, right? But you don't want to leave them in for long periods of times because that actually affects the battery management system. So beware of chargers also that are counterfeit, and we're going to talk a little bit about that also. Don't leave rechargeable batteries. Another thing is in direct sunlight or excessive heat, because these could easily become damaged and the battery management system become damaged also. If a battery shows signs of puffing, do not try to charge it and discard it in an approved recycler, even though they say that these things are recyclable and you might see the International Recycle symbol on them. People are making the mistakes that they're throwing them in recycle bins, and it's going into usually a tipping floor, or it's not, they're not designed to recycle them that way. You have to use an approved recycler. So usually like a Batteries Plus. I know that Lowe's and Home Depot have stations where you can drop off the batteries that basically will go to a approved recycler. And usually those are for any of your cordless power tools. Don't use a battery that's been modified capacity because it has a higher voltage, what it's intended to. There's a lot of things that they call Frankenstein batteries. People will get batteries that are damaged and then they'll repackage them. And you're seeing this a lot in New York City, where a lot of fires that have happened are from somebody that is usually either modifying something, a Frankenstein battery, or they're doing something that they're not supposed to do, and they sell it because, oh yeah, the battery has a higher voltage, so it's going to last longer. But it's not designed for the battery management system, and that's where the failure happens. So be aware of fake or counterfeit batteries, and this just shows you a picture of what a counterfeit battery could look like. And what they do is they take these 18650s. You can see that it's got a 48-volt capacity. It's got longer lifetime. And what they do is they kind of like wrap them. They make them so that they can sell them, but they really are unstable. So always remember to charge the battery, use a battery from the manufacturer of the power tool or the equipment that you're using as not, so you're not using something that is counterfeit. This is another picture of like how much, if you were to get a DeWalt charger, $85 for DeWalt charger, on Amazon or wherever it might be. You can get these OEM chargers that are, they're made in third world countries for $35. Oh, the battery's going to last longer. It's cheaper to get, and they may not work as far as the battery management system. So I always tell people to make sure that they're using the same tool and charger for what it's intended for. So just be aware of that also. So what are the signs of a damaged lithium-ion battery? Well, first of all, if they puff or they expand, and I was just instructing a Haz-Mat class, and we're talking about this. I have a tablet that I always kept in the charger, right? It was an old Dell charger, and then I looked at it, and the back was had basically expanded. So it basically the battery itself had puffed and expanded the back of the tablet, and I'm like, well, that's not good. So first of all, one thing is if these things are puffing or expanding, get them out of living spaces. The best thing I could recommend is that you take them outside, take them far enough away from the building. You can put them in a 5-gallon bucket with water or sand, whatever you want to do. Sand will work also. But what it does is it gets it out of the living space and keep it away from buildings where if it propagates, it goes off, that it's not going to harm anybody and harm anything or property. These usually, a lot of these things get damaged by puncture, overheating. You're charging it for a long period of time. They get overheated. The battery goes into failure mode. One thing that you want to also make sure that you don't try to charge a battery that is a fault on it. So if you see the red and green lights, depending on what the charger is, because I use this example of like a Milwaukee, they have a red and green light. Also, the chargers usually have some sort of legend on them that tells you if it's red, if it's blinking, it's under charge state. If it's like a solid, it may be starting to not work properly. And if it goes into a failure mode, you can look what that legend says. Get that battery out of there. Even though it's under, the charger is under fault, people try to recharge them, right? Because, hey, these batteries are not cheap. So you're trying to charge something, and that's where it could go into failure mode. So this is what I was talking about. By the way, if these things get too low a voltage, I've had where I've had my drone batteries where actually that goes into a fault mode because they've gone down to zero state. Sometimes, you can charge a battery at zero state, but sometimes they don't. So discard and don't try to charge because this could cause a fire, basically because of the fault. Also, off-gassing. These things, when they off-gas, if these things start to puff and they start to off-gas, the best thing to do is, if it's possible, get it into a well-ventilated area. If it's well-ventilated, if it's not, these things go into thermal runaway and full propagation in less than a minute. These things off gas, highly flammable gases, a lot of toxic gases, hydrogen, H2S, methane, different fluorides, hydrogen cyanide, hydrogen fluoride, CO. These will, obviously in a confined area, especially with some of these superheated gases like hydrogen, that's where, if it hits an ignition source, that's where the explosion happens. So the bottom line is always, recognize when these things are starting to go into fault mode. And if, like I said, if it starts to off gas, if it's safe to do so, try to get it out. But if you can't, like I said, yeah, you have less than a minute to do this, right? Before it goes into propagation. I would say try to evacuate the area. Make sure you're not storing these, like I said, or charging these in living space areas. An 18650 battery, that little AA, that little oversized, little bit bigger than AA, releases 8 liters of toxic gas. So that's one of the things to remember. This is just a picture of a Milwaukee charger that went into thermal runaway and the battery propagated. You can see that there is electrical damage. The battery itself was melted. Luckily, it did not catch anything on fire, but this is what these things look like. How does a battery, let's talk about, so you have your cell failure. First of all, you might have that venting on the fault. You have your cell failure, and then it depends on how many batteries that are in that cell get damaged, right? You have your thermal runaway event, and then either you have full propagation or partial propagation, which is why these things, they're so different, because they could go into thermal runaway 6 to 8 months later on the batteries that were damaged. I'm going to show you a video of a drone battery, and this looks like one of my batteries. And what they do is they'll puncture this battery, and you can watch how fast that this happens. So just think of, you're riding a e-mobility device, you hit a rock, and the battery gets punctured. So let's just show you what this looks like. So you're gonna hear this is the superheated off gases. Now it's going into thermal runaway. Don't do this at home. Let's just say that. These are trained firefighters that are doing this, if you can hear that pass device going off. But you can see that that's starting to go into thermal runaway. As it continues, okay, there's the thermal runaway. And there's the full propagation. So that happened in less than a minute. So you don't have a lot of time to get these out. So let's talk a little bit about stranded energy and recognition. So stranded energy is when a lithium-ion battery is either fully charged or brought down to a manageable state. So usually what I do, and what they usually tell you to do, is if you're not using your batteries, like for my drones, if I'm not flying them for a while, my storage, I want to bring them down to a 50 to 30% state of charge. Because a 50 to 30% state of charge, also, if we were to have an event where a battery failure was to happen, chances are that if you had a 100% state of charge, it would be a lot worse than a 30 or 50% state of charge. And that's the reason why, when you get things that are shipped, the shipping regulations for hazardous materials, because it's a class 9 miscellaneous, these usually are shipped at a 30 to 50% state of charge. That's the reason why when you get the powered tool or whatever, it tells you, or your product, you have to charge it to a full state of charge before using it. And that's the reason for that, because they want to have the state of charge at a less type, at a less state of charge, because if the battery was to go into failure mode, it's less hazardous, if you can believe it or not, right? So the potential for reignition goes up when there is damage to the casing of the battery. So that's what I was talking about. If you had a thermal runaway event, and say you had like 15 batteries in a case, and like 7 of them were fully propagated, and then 8 were not, what they find out is, especially in these EV vehicles, that with these 4,000 batteries, there could be a lot of batteries that are not damaged. So they take it to a metal, scrapyard dealer, and then something happens, and 6 months later, these things will refire back up because they got damaged and they went into failure mode. So this is why it's very important. Like I said, it talks about some case histories have found fires 6 months to a year, refiring back up because of that. You can also damage a battery by shaking or puncturing the packaging, causing the separator to expose the lithium, uh, the product between the anode and the cathode. So that's where you have total failure mode also. There are warning labels also for solar powered homes. In my home, I actually have a I have a solar system, but I have panels, but I don't have a battery backup system. And so these usually are there. This is a warning device for first responders. And usually these are usually on the inverter, which is usually outside the building, or also inside the panel. They also have that also, meaning that, if you were to think that you were shutting off the power, you still could have stored energy in there also. So that's what this means. But the reason why I don't have a power bank system is because I have a bi-level home, and my garage is actually the lower level of the area of the house where the living space is above. So I'm like, well, until they get these chemistries better, more practical and more safe, I'm just not going to have a battery bank backup system. So I opt to not have that. There are things in there, with some of the new chemistries, and some of them will also sell suppression systems. But is that totally going to prevent a thermal runaway event from full propagation, possible hydrogen gas, and a possible explosion because it hit ignition sources? And that's the reason why firefighters and first responders, when they go to these houses with these solar panels, have to understand that when they're trying to get into the garage, that's where the potential for an explosion could happen because of the hydrogen gas and the mixture of the superheated gases that are there. And that's the reason why these labels are on there also. So small power banks are known, usually LFP chemistry. These are large sources with a lot of power and energy. Like I said, they're usually found with homes with solar panels. Usually the solar panel manufacturer or the installer will try to sell these, because what happens when the solar panels are not active because the sun goes down? Well, then you don't have the battery. The battery bank will store the energy and be able to, like, that the power goes out, you'll be able to have that. But like I said, where are these being stored at? To the best of my knowledge, these are usually stored in the garages of the areas or in the areas where in the home. You can't really store them outside because they don't do well with the outside environments. Now, maybe in other areas of the United States, where you don't have snow and cold weather, these are placed outside. But really, they don't do well. Like I said, you do not want to get these things overheated. So if you store them outside, you have direct sunlight, heavy cold temperatures, things like that. So homes usually have, they'll have many cells packed inside and multiple battery cells. Some of these will also have multiple power banks also. So you might have 2 or 3 power banks based on what the house needs are, right? So remember that probably it'll be lithium iron phosphate, and these will release 50% of hydrogen gas, even though they say it's a safer chemistry. You also find these power banks in, like I said, solar farms, usually in rural areas, but we've had first responders that were not familiar with power banks. And when they went to open the door, they actually it actually exploded and blew the firefighter. There was actually a case in Phoenix. And I've actually been to some webinars that this individual was on, and they've actually had uh, where there was injuries to firefighters because of this. Uh, the one thing about these they're trying to make them more safe. They're trying to make sure that they are in a controlled environment. So they're in air conditioned areas. They try not to get them so they're really hot. Their cells are separate now. They're trying to keep them built, designed, engineered. There's a lot of research on, especially like the firefighters. I remember that there's a whole lot of research going on with these types of batteries right now, how we can make them more safe. But these solar banks are built for indoor locations only. And large commercial structures that house these power banks are now required to have cooling fans and air conditioned environment, protect the battery from getting too overheated. What do we do when we have these things that are damaged, right? Well, PHMSA, which is the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which covers the hazardous material regulation transportation rules, allows specific permits for these type of batteries because we have so many of these batteries out there, and we do not want to put them in commerce or out into the public area when they're damaged. But if they overpack them and they put them in these specially designed DOT special permit packaging, along with proper labels on there, and you don't overpackage them, then these can be sent back to a designated recycler. So there's usually some sort of a special absorbent, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But some people will use sand, but it has to be something as a combination package that it's used and the special permit is followed by what the transportation regulations require. These can only be done by ground transportation only. You can't ship a battery, that's damaged, obviously, by air. This is a specialty design package for damaged batteries. You can see it's a 5-gallon can that has the UN number 3480. It says it's got the special language required. This package contains a damaged or defective lithium-ion batteries. It has a UN packaging specification special permit number on there, along with whatever, how you overpack these things. This is another Call to Recycle is a company that got a special permit. If you can see the DOT SP, the special permit, designed to overpack these things. Make sure you're using a designated DOT special permit designation if you're trying to send these back to a designated recycler. We're not talking about throwing this in a recycle area, in a recycle bin, which is what common mistakes are happening right now. They're throwing them in routine trash also. And what's happening is, you've got garbage truck fires that the garbage truck's dumping out, and these fires are happening, once they dump these out of the truck onto the street, they're trying to put them out. And really, these things are going to do what they're going to do. You're not going to stop these fires from happening. These propagate. You got to just let them do what they're going to do. So there is a special packaging and absorbent that's out there. And one of the things what I usually have is I have a sample of cell block. It's called Cell Block EX. The New York City Fire Department has these. They overpack things. What they're also doing with some of the EV vehicles, or they are throwing them they're basically flipping them upside down in a large container, like that is usually filled with water, and these things will propagate. They'll do what they're going to do. They may go into full propagation, they may not, but it at least tries to at least make the scene safe. But then they have to look at, as far as the contaminant, how they're going to dispose of the contaminated water once they get it. So this is one of the areas that they're doing. They're also using designated fire blankets, but now there's studies on fire blankets that actually what it does is it keeps the superheated gas, and they've had some explosions based on the Fire Research Institute running tests and so on. So right now, they may cover them with a fire blanket, but they may not. There's specific things on EV vehicles also, and I'm going to show you the e-plug in a minute. But as you can see, that cell block is something that you can overpack with. And what it does, cell block is almost like a plastic material. You'll see that it's like blue and white. If you saw what the sample looks like. And what it does is it helps from refiring, basically reignition. So what they're doing is they're getting these batteries that are damaged, and they're throwing them in 5-gallon buckets and in 55-gallon drums with cell block as the absorbent, and that helps stop reignition of the batteries. So again, Cell Block EX is a product that is out there for that purpose, and that is actually used in the special permit. I just attended a lithium-ion presentation, and I had no idea that these brimstone bags exist, but actually the brimstone is actually the manufacturer of the true fire blanket. These things are really expensive. So these are being used on some commercial airlines. So if a cell phone goes gets damaged, it starts to off gas, they can put this into this brimstone bag, and it helps because it's got a liner in there. It's actually got materials that will help prevent that from reignition. So there is a DOT exemption for these specialty devices. As of right now, not all major carriers are doing this. To the best of my knowledge, the last time I heard was like 3 or 4 major air carriers are doing this because of commercial airlines. One of the big things right now is they are really watching storage systems, these portable storage devices that people are bringing along, and you can't put these in the carriage, right? These have to be on carry-ons. So they also have to make sure that these storage devices, which have obviously high energy, don't go in to get damaged, and that's where the fire could happen. So they're carrying these brimstone bags. There are different types. This one is a smaller bag that is designed for cell phones and small, probably tablets. But then there's a larger bag that's designed for laptops. And they'll have these, like I said, some major carriers have this now. And hopefully, FAA, DOT will require these in all commercial airlines. We're hoping that's down the road. This is the EV for EV vehicles, the emergency plug that I was talking about. So what happens is when firefighters, first of all, they have to dismantle the electric system. They have to try to get in there to get the batteries that are damaged, that are going into thermal runaway or propagation. And what they found out is, I know in New York City where they tried to put out a fire and all of a sudden the car actually thinks it's still operable, and it actually moves away from where the firefighters are. And so what this e-plug does, they call it a banana plug. There's also some other ones out there. But what it does is it tricks the car into thinking it's in a charged state. So you turn this plug on, it'll be yellow, and then when you plug it in, it'll eventually, when it turns green, it actually prevents the car from moving. So it tricks the car into think it's in a charged state. So if the car's in a charged state, it's not going to move. So they actually had an individual that before they had these e-plugs, was trying to get an apparat piece of equipment under where the fire was under the carriage of the car, and it actually moved on them. So that's the reason why it prevents accidental startup. So what I want to show you is this is a short video of a Tesla that apparently what they were doing is they were backing in a marina. They were backing a boat up, and apparently they got too close to the water, and the Tesla goes into the water, and because of the salt water and possible some of the other things, because of the damage to the Tesla, it actually catches fire. And it just shows you that these batteries are going to do what they're going to do. So these batteries continue to burn even underwater. Like I said, with the New York City Fire Department flipping the car upside down into a large container of water, they're still going to propagate and go into thermal runaway. So this is a short video that shows you that this is a Tesla on fire underwater in a pond. So you can see that the Tesla is totally submerged. The batteries are still going into thermal runaway. There's still full propagation. And they basically are going to, until under full propagation, until all the batteries are totally propagated, or if they pull it out, they could, maybe all the batteries are not been going into thermal runaway or fault. They could refire. So this is the reason for that. There actually is I've heard a lot of stories about flatbed haulers. It will not pick up an EV vehicle that's damaged. Why? Because I just told you that if that Tesla, an electric mobility device, a flatbed, while en route to, whatever it may be, to either the to the service provider, or if it's a fire that happened, uh, basically to the scrap dealer, these have shown that these will catch fire again while en route. So that's the reason why flatbed haulers, a lot of them, will not even pick up electric devices that are damaged. Or I've also heard stories of where the fire department will put a fire blanket over the vehicle and then follow the vehicle to the scrapyard dealer with a flatbed trailer to make sure that it doesn't catch fire again. So I want you to also be aware that these electric devices, even though this is more for e-mobility devices and stuff we use at home, there are a lot of electric buses out there. There's a lot of videos. I just saw one in Montreal that happened like 2 or 3 days ago. I know that Cincinnati, where I'm from, just got the city of Cincinnati has 25 new electric buses, school buses. What happens when you got a lot of kids on there, not a good thing. What they want is first responders. Now, there is an app for first responders that they can go out and look at, because these are bought on grants. We found out that the state of Ohio and the state that I'm in actually gave grant money because they wanted green technology out there. So we can see what school systems have how many electric buses that are out there. So that is a pre-planning for first responders. Just some more information out there for them. So the last video that I have is from an outfit, but this is from the Fire Institute, and it's going to show different types of fires that are out there. It's first going to show, well, first of all, one thing I'm going to tell you is don't put one of your cell phones on the dashboard in a 90-degree weather. You're going to see a fire that happens once you see the heat, the heat come on and damage the battery, go into fault. And then you'll also see some rechargeable devices that are being charged in cell phone places that where they repair them. And then you'll also see that some of these e-mobility devices, there's videos of like where they're on a subway or they're on a bus or even in an elevator where they'll start to off gas. And I got news for you. You're pretty much SOL if you're in an elevator. If these things off gas and these start going to propagation, it's just there's nowheres to go. So there'll be some videos of that, short videos, and then after that we'll do a summary and take questions.
The purpose of this showreel is to provide some real-life examples of lithium battery fires and illustrate the different ways the fires present in the different devices. First, here are some examples of typical smaller device lithium battery fires which have been featured on YouTube and in the news. Mobile phone fires. A standard mobile phone comes with a built-in safety device which will usually switch it off at about 40 degrees centigrade. But if, for example, the phone was left in the sun on a car dashboard, it will continue to heat up until it catches a light. Mobile phones contain a small lithium battery, typically 60 watt-hours or less. E-cigarettes. These contain a cylindrical cell battery. There is virtually no warning. They almost seem to spontaneously ignite. This can be particularly dangerous when kept in a pocket. Power banks. These devices contain larger size cell batteries, typically 4 times 21 700s, which can charge a phone 3 or 4 times. That amount of stored energy can cause quite a significant fire if the power bank is in a bag or pocket. A lithium battery powering a laptop is usually between 60 and 100 watt-hours and is capable of spraying debris across the office, so is likely to set other areas of the room on fire too. Electric scooter fire. There is more warning with this as smoke is emitted first, but it still erupts into a fire quickly. The lithium battery is in region of 500 to 750 watt-hours.
It does unplug it.
Electric scooters are now banned on TfL network due to fire risk and regular fire incidents which have taken place. E-bikes. These can have up to a kilowatt-hour lithium battery. Just like the e-scooter, the fire starts by emitting smoke first. Using a garden hose to spray the battery with water doesn't make any difference to the fire. It just keeps going. And now for some larger fires involving a recycling centre, a battery energy storage system, BESS, and
these
a
are
couple
common
of electric
mistakes.
Vehicles. The recycling centre.
I've heard
All
so many
lithium
people
battery devices have built-in
that work in these
obsolescence.
areas,
So once they have been through up to
landfills,
1,000 cycles of
tipping
recharging
floors,
the battery, will need to be replaced.
happens
It's
all the
worth
time.
noting that this is also true for electric vehicles. So the number of batteries and devices which are going through recycling centres is ever increasing. Powder extinguishers are often used on large lithium battery fires in recycling centres, but these are ineffective, so the battery will continue to reignite. 0.7 litres of smoke is generated per battery watt-hour. Therefore, a 6.5 watt-hour battery will generate at least 5 litres of smoke. Next is a video showing testing of the fire hazard of a 125 kilowatt-hour energy storage system comprised of lithium nickel oxide, lithium manganese oxide batteries. The fire smokes for a long time, but once the flames break through, the whole container is destroyed due to propagation of thermal runaway from pack to pack. In China, there was one of these container fires per month last year. Electric vehicle fires can reignite hours, days, or even weeks.
I want you to see all the batteries that are laying on there.
So the key question is,
maybe damaged,
when is a fire out? The fire brigade struggled to douse the fire even using 3,000 gallons of water.
650s laying on the ground.
Fire chief, the purpose of this.
So, just to summarize, I just want to remember to charge batteries away from occupied areas. I want you to make sure that you're not charging them in living spaces, not leaving them charged for long periods of times. Don't try to charge a battery that may have a fault. If that red light, green light's going on, make sure you're not trying to charge that. You can recycle that in an area like Batteries Plus or Lowe's or Home Depot or another area that is designed for actually recycling batteries. Don't throw batteries in that are rechargeable and routine trash. This is a common mistake. I've talked to many municipalities about this. They're trying to get a campaign out there to make sure the public is not throwing these in regular recycle bins or the routine trash. If the battery starts to show signs of damage, get it outside the building, put it in a 5-gallon bucket. You can put sand on it, or you can just leave it in a 5-gallon bucket. But get it away from an area that's in living spaces. Recognize packaging that, like I said, starts to expand, becomes unstable, puffing, to make sure that get that battery out, get that battery away from living spaces. So that's all I've got, and I will take questions now, Samantha, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, great. Ben, we have a little bit of time for some questions. So now's the time to get your questions into the Zoom Q&A app. If we don't get to your question, be sure to know that I'm going to pass everything over to Ben. He will do his best to answer any other questions that we don't get to today. Ben, our main question, because you've talked about it a lot, it's in your bullet points here. The question is surrounding how to charge batteries that are a part of devices that are in the home, such as a wheelchair or oxygen concentrators. What are we doing with those? How are we making sure that those are safely charged in our home?
First, I'd like to know is if you can take that battery out separate, or does it have to actually be charged in the device that you're trying to charge? If you can get it out and put it into an area, you know, that is separate away from living space. If not, look for it, and this all depends on, how many times you, because there is a shelf life on these. They will allow your battery to be charged so many times before it starts to, lose charge. If it's starting to lose charge, get yourself another battery, I would say, and then you can dispose of it the way you need to. Uh, this is a common thing that's going on right now. You're seeing a lot of large cells that are being, because of, it may be like ride-on mowers and things like that. Have I've even seen fork trucks now that in industrial settings that have a lot of cells and batteries in there. So I would say if you can take that battery out, which you should be able to, charge it separately and not charge it while the individual is obviously not in a living space if it's possible.
Okay, got it. The other question is kind of surrounding if we're, taking it away from our living area and it's now outside. Should we be leaving it outside? Are we watching it? What's the best practice there to make sure that it's not out in weather?
I would say if it's outside, it's away from any buildings. I would say it's okay until you can get it over to a proper recycler. So I would say you can leave it there, providing it's not where anybody, no living space, no buildings are close by. And then you can, because obviously what I've done is I've taken some of my larger drone batteries that have puffed, because this happens quite a bit. I've got some large batteries that then I will take it over to the recycler once it's puffed. But if it showed signs of damage where it's starting to off gas, then let it do its thing in the bucket.
Absolutely. And just also to mention to our listeners here, couple of things. Put the money into the proper charging devices. Don't use those knockoff
Absolutely.
charging devices. You might think cheaper is convenient, but it's not really convenient when
Yeah.
you're paying an insurance company to replace your home and something that you're replaceable.
Frankenstein batteries. There's a
Absolutely.
big campaign on Frankenstein batteries where firefighters are going in and they're finding these people because, well, if you can buy it on Amazon or another location and you have a DeWalt charger, but it has a longer charge life, it has more energy, it lasts longer. That's where the common mistake is. So if you have a DeWalt uh, tool, use a DeWalt charger and a DeWalt battery. That's all, just make sure you're using the same thing. Don't buy knockoff chargers. Don't buy knockoff, things that obviously supposedly have better time, better voltage, etc.
Exactly. And yeah, do your research. Like I said, spend a little bit of money to make sure that you have the proper charging equipment. Like Ben said, it matches DeWalt with DeWalt. The other thing is we just did a webinar with Just Right. They will explain all of the proper recycling procedures, how to store batteries before you can get them to a recycling planned for the proper recycling. So just make sure that you're putting in a little bit of money to get those battery bags, to get those proper recharging equipment for your battery. But Ben, that is about it for us today. I'm going to send all the
Okay.
questions over to you. Is there anything you want our audience to keep top of mind today or to take away from today so they can be safe and successful?
I would say, I'm not trying to scare you. I see some people saying, "Oh, I got to get all these batteries out of my house." As long as they're stable and you're using, you're not overcharging them. It's this basically. When I talked to the Ohio Fire Academy about 3 years ago, and I said that I was going to do these presentations, this is just to get you to recognize when things are damaged and things are starting to go into failure, what to do. So you're not keeping them in living spaces, things like that. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. And I'll say it, I will try and scare you a little bit because lithium-ion batteries are a little bit scary. But like Ben said, as long as you're storing them properly, you're not cutting corners, you're going to be okay. So Ben, a huge thank you to you for being with us today. Like I said, we're going to see you at Safety Connect. Make sure that
Yes.
you're registered for that because Ben's going to be there if you have any more lithium questions. So I'll send out a copy of the presentation to everybody in a few days. But thanks again for joining us. Take care and stay safe. Bye, everyone.